Hi, and welcome to my channel. Or if you're a returning subscriber, hi again. It's so nice to see you back here for another video. My name's Tess Lark, and today I'm going to show you a really simple way to make a stunning 3D epoxy flower using epoxy resin, glitter, and alcohol ink. And just a quick little shameless plug, this channel is so close to hitting 7,000 subscribers and I really can't believe it. I'm so excited. So thank you to everybody who has pressed that subscribe button so far. And if you haven't yet, make sure that you do that today. Or if you have a crafty and curious person in your life that you think might like my content, make sure to share it with them. I'd love to see this community continue to grow. Okay, as always, all of the materials that I use for this project will be linked in the description below, so if you're curious about any of that, all of that information will be down there for you. And let's just hop into today's video. To save some time in this video, I went ahead and I pre-mixed my resin. This mold holds about 100 milliliters of resin, but I'm working on a couple different projects today, so I mixed up a big batch to start. Once my resin is thoroughly mixed, I like to use a heat gun to pop any bubbles that begin to rise to the surface. I also usually let my mixed resin sit for about 5 minutes or so, just to allow those bubbles to come up to the surface so I can easily pop them before moving on. My next step is going to be to section off some of this resin into a smaller measuring container because I'll be adding some pigment to it. Because I'm only making one bloom today, I really don't need too much of this pigmented resin. Just about 20 or 25 milliliters will be fine. Next, I'm going to add my pigment. And for the white, I'm using Pinata Colors Blanco. I really do like this alcohol ink. I use it quite a bit. I've found that I get really consistent and really good results using Pinata Colors alcohol ink. Recently, I had a comment on one of my videos asking if the resin doesn't cure correctly because there's so much pigment in it. And what I've heard from other resin artists here on YouTube, and also what I found just from my own experiments, is that as long as you keep the overall volume of resin to be 90% resin and no more than 10% pigment, you should be all right and you shouldn't have any problems curing. And typically I find that I need way less than 10% of the total volume to be a pigment to get a nice pigmented resin. I hope that helps. But I definitely find that different resins do have different curing times, so keep the manufacturer's instructions in mind. Also, when it's warmer outside, your resin cures a lot faster than if you live in a colder climate or if it's just a colder time of year. So just give it some time, and I'm crossing my fingers that all of your crafts turn out exactly how you want them to in 2025 and beyond. I'm just blabbing away over here, but when you're mixing your pigment and your resin, you want to make sure that you get it thoroughly mixed, scraping both the sides and the bottom of your container as you go. You can always add more pigment, but you can't take it out. So you can start slowly and just add a little bit and add a little bit more if you feel like you need a little bit more. Now that I have my white resin mixed, I'm going to transfer that into a sandwich bag that I'll be using as a piping bag. So I've just got an empty clean cup here that I'm using to hold my bag open while I scrape out all of that white resin into the bag. Next, I'll just remove this bag from the cup and try to get out as much air as I possibly can before twisting it up and setting it off to the side. I'm not going to cut it until right before I need to use it just to minimize the mess. And don't worry about that blue resin in the background, that is a project for another day. For the center of my flower, I'm going to be using some chunky glitter by Let's Resin in the shade Opal Gold. And I'm pouring a little bit of that into a very small silicone mixing cup. You don't need a lot of this. Again, it's just going to be the center of the flower, but I'm going to add just a little bit of resin to the glitter. And I'm doing it this way instead of pouring the resin first and then adding the glitter, because you really want your glitter to stay in kind of a paste consistency. If it's really loose and flowy, it's going to spread out throughout your entire piece and not stay in the center of the flower. Now it's time to pour our resin, and I am going to be pouring this piece in 2 different layers, so I don't want to fill my mold completely. I'm just pouring a thin layer of clear resin, filling the mold about halfway to 3/4 of the way full. And the resin is quite viscous, so it's good to work slowly because it takes a while for it to level out and be where it's going to end up. So take your time and pour slowly. After I've got my first layer of resin in there, I'm just setting some of that gold glitter in the center of my mold. And that's gonna act as the center of my flower, and I'll be dropping my pigments around that center. The colors that I'm using for my bloom today are golden yellow, coral, and pink, and those are all alcohol inks by Pinata Colors. Once again, I'll have them linked down below, but if there's a specific color or color combination you'd like to see from me, please let me know in the comments as well. Make sure you give your alcohol inks a good shake before using them, but I'm starting with the yellow around the center, and then following that with my coral, and after that dropping in some pink. Just equally spacing those dots in between each other. The alcohol ink will spread out. Next up, I'm going to very carefully cut just the tip off of my cat poses hi, but I'm cutting just the tip off of my white alcohol ink here. I also set down some paper towels, and as always, I'm working on silicone mats to protect my desk. And hi, wow, I'm so sorry that my hand and my arm blocked pretty much this entire shot, but I'm just using my white alcohol ink, starting in the center and moving my way to the outside, making a spiral. Do you see that spiral pattern there? Yes, so we're just spiraling it out, really, really easy. You do, however, want to keep a little bit of a lip between the outside of the mold and then that last line of white resin, because sometimes the white resin can kind of cling onto the sides of the mold and it makes your flower a little bit misshapen. But now I'm taking a clean popsicle stick and I'm using that to drag those lines from the outside into the center of the mold to make a flower pattern. And I'm just using the paper towel that I have off to the side to clean the popsicle stick in between swipes. And then I'll just use my heat gun once more to pop any bubbles that are forming and to start kind of blooming out these colors together before covering it up and letting it cure completely. So hi, we're in the future, about 24 hours. I've let this coaster set up fairly well, and now I'm just pouring a layer of black resin on top of that. And I'm actually using a resin that is just black. I don't need to add any pigment to it. It's by Let's Resin. It's pretty fun, and I actually have a couple other videos that I use this and I mix it on camera. So if you're curious about that, I will link one of those videos down below in the description. And I didn't mix up quite enough here, but I'm gonna make sure that it is enough. So I'm using my heat gun to heat that up a little bit, just because once the resin's hotter, it's easier to manipulate. It gets a little bit more viscous and a little bit more runny. And next, I'm just using my popsicle stick to literally just drag that resin out to where it starts to catch onto the sides of the mold, and then the rest of it will follow. I really just need a thin layer of black in the background here, and I think I can make that happen. I kind of really like how it looks when the black is separating and you can see those colors underneath. It reminds me of those scratch papers that you used to have when you were a kid. Do you know what I'm talking about? It was like black, and then you would scratch it with something and there'd be like rainbow beneath it. Anyway, after I've got this layer of resin on here, I'm gonna hit this with my heat gun again, and then I will be covering it up to let it cure. I went ahead and I let my piece set up overnight, so it's nice and cured, totally hard. So let's pop it out of the mold and see how it turned out. From the back, it looks like it might be a little bit blobby, so I'm a little bit apprehensive, but let's see. Ooh. She's not blobby at all. She's super lacy. Kind of almost reminds me of a Mattia poppy. Do any of you know what I'm talking about? They're these big, beautiful poppies that bloom in the spring here in Southern California. And I go pretty wild every time I see them. When they're blowing in the breeze, they kind of remind me of dancing ladies, and they're really, really cute. I'll make sure to insert a picture. But look at this. Look at all these layers. The color really bled out beautifully. We lost a lot of that pink, it seems like, but the orange and the yellow is really prominent. I can see some of the pink in the tips here. I think you'll be able to see it a little bit better when I shoot it in natural light. But overall, this turned out really pretty. That glitter in the center, I love. And I can't wait to hear your thoughts on this piece in the comments down below. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for spending part of your day with me, especially if you made it all the way to the end of this video. And if you did make it all the way to the end of this video, make sure to leave me some sort of food-related emoji or comment just to confuse anybody who hasn't made it this far. As always, I really hope that this video inspires you to make something of your own today, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!